So it's foul weather outside, and so it's a perfect opportunity for me to start potting on my peppers. And I've wanted to do it for a while now because, as you can see, they're quite big and they're starting to get, some of the leaves are a bit yellow towards the bottom there. And yeah, they need more nutrients basically. So I'm potting them on into these nice big pots, and they should be really happy in those. And I'll just show you the process, and I'll just talk a little bit about the peppers as I go. So these are my first earlies. These were sown back in December. They're pretty big now, and I've warmed this compost up nicely in the house overnight, and so they're pretty good. Oh yes, they definitely need potting on. So these are long yellow ringos, and they're pretty nice. We really like this particular variety. It's super sweet, nice and big, and they come really nice and early, so hence they're part of my early sowings. So I'm basically planting them at the same level that they were in the original pots, and they're really stocky, which is what I like to see. There's no need for me to provide any support to them. You can see they've got a few flowers on them, and so I am taking the flowers off when I can easily get to them, because obviously I don't want any flowers right now. I've got a good little setup actually in here in the conservatory. It's a lot nicer than being outside in my workshop. The compost that I'm using actually is an interesting one. I've not used it before, but I kind of quite like the look of it. So it's made from sheep's wool and bracken, and the manufacturers of it claim that it doesn't need any additional nutrients to be added, which is kind of nice because I can never keep on top of adding, fertilizer and the like. I'm just not that sort of organised person. I can be organised for short bursts of time, but just being organised on a day-to-day basis to make sure that I'm providing fertiliser at the right dilution and the right intake frequency and all of that sort of thing. I'm just not very good at keeping track of those sorts of things. So this seems perfect for me, that being a plant and forget sort of person, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll plant these up and forget. Now we are going away this week for a little bit, and so although my daughter will be kind of here to look after things, it'd be much nicer to have them in these bigger pots. Compost is nice and moist, and so they won't need watering while we're away, which is just perfect. So those are all long yellow ringos. So the next ones I've got are just 2 Lunchbox peppers, and I only had 2 of these germinate, but I only had 5 seeds because they were just a trial packet that I got sent, and I've subsequently sown quite a lot of them actually because I really like the idea of more Lunchbox peppers. We tend to prefer to eat things fresh when we can, and obviously Lunchbox peppers are kind of the perfect thing for eating large quantities of them fresh. So I'm really pleased with that. You can see I'm just doing this with my hands, just making a space in the pots and dropping them in, and they're looking really nice, aren't they? Very pleased with those. Now the ones I'm doing today, they're just a quarter of my peppers, So they're just the quarter that I will be planting early and mollycoddle in. I call that my first early sowing, and first earlies are a small number of things that I can afford to put a bit of extra effort into. Then my second early sowing are the ones that they've just germinated and they're, you know, this sort of size now. I'll put a photo up to show you them. And though I don't want to really mollycoddle those very much, I don't have time to do that for everything. And then my main crops will be sown at the beginning of March, and they won't require any mollycoddling at all because they won't be planted out until sort of the end of May, by which time, you know, the weather will be favourable. They'll go out in low tunnels. All my peppers, or almost all my peppers, will be planted out in May. Some early May, these early ones that I'm doing at the moment, and they might need extra fleece. The beds will have to be open and closed, you know, open during the day and then closed at night. They might even need a kind of candle to keep them a little bit warm. You know, lots of fussing, basically, way too much for me to do that for all of them. And then the rest of them, as I say, they'll be planted out sort of the middle of May, so the second earlies, and then the last batch towards the end of May, and then the outdoor ones will go out in June. And they need no protection at all, really, other than just hardening off. So that's the way I try and do things. First earlies get lots of attention for an early crop, but not very many of them. Second early's a bit less attention. Main crop, no attention at all, basically. Yeah, so that's the kind of approach that I like to take. So I'm putting them in these big, super big trays. And these are the trays that I grew my lettuces in over winter. And I got a fabulous crop under the grow lights. And it struck me that these are just the perfect size to put these bigger potted peppers in. And they're bigger than the shelf unit, so it allows me to fit more in than I would otherwise be able to fit. So I did just want to show you how everything ends up. So normally on these shelves I use these standard drip trays, and they're just exactly the size of the shelf unit, but by putting these big trays on, and they kind of go out the edge here but still lovely and stable, I can get way more seedlings in there, and they're still getting good light, so I think they're going to be really happy up there. And they'll live there at least until March, and then I move them up onto that shelf where the winter squash are, and those winter squash will be gone obviously by then. And yeah, then they're just happy in natural light from, I don't know exactly when in March I'll put them up there, but it depends how sunny it is. And they will have a little fan up there which just keeps them well ventilated and just keeps challenging them a little bit and makes sure that they're nice stocky plants. And I do have a fan down there which blows on them during the day, again to keep them nice and stocky. And I've got that one other tray which is going to go down here, and you can just see these are the little peppers that I planted a few weeks ago, and so I've got another 12 of those, and those are my second earlies. And right now, because I have a little bit of space on this grow shelf, I've got my second succession of potatoes. These are my super early potatoes, and you can see the first succession just there. And these are, as I say, these are first earlies, new potatoes, and then these are my first succession of main crop potatoes, and they're looking quite nice as well. And a tray radish. So yeah, the radishes aren't there for very long, only just about a week before they go to the polytunnel, and then spend about a week in the polytunnel and then they're planted out. And then I've got my first cucumbers, and you might just be able to see them peeking up now. So I'll just talk a little bit about the way that I've decided to grow peppers. I've grown peppers in lots of different places. So I've grown them outside, I've grown them in the polytunnel, and I've grown them in my low tunnels. And what I find is that they do the best in the low tunnels. And I think the reason for that seems to be that in the low tunnels, I'll have the low tunnels open once it gets nice and warm. So in June and July and August and September. The low tunnels are open. In May, they will probably be closed some of the time and open some of the time. So the benefit of this is that the tops of the plants, you might think of as the canopy, the leaf area and the fruits, are lovely and warm, but there's loads of ventilation at the bottom of the plants and around the root area, and that combination the plants seem to really love. And you know, so there's also higher humidity at the top, lower humidity at the bottom, and I think they also the leaves get a little bit of shade from the plastic, and I don't know, they seem to relish that really. I noticed in the polytunnel that the plants that got a bit of shade did better than the plants that were in full sun. So although people think of, you know, peppers as something that really likes the sun, my experience so far is that a little tiny bit of shade, as I said, like you get from being under polythene, so lots of heat, lots of humidity, but still good ventilation, and a little bit of shade seems to be perfect for them. So now I'm on to the chili peppers. And these are just slightly smaller, but still pretty good. So these are jalapenos, and I've also got some Anaheims as well, and I'll show you those in a minute. So same story here. There's a significant difference, and that is that these are going to be kept, some of them are going to be kept inside the house on the kitchen window. They might go out eventually into the garden or something, but kind of half of them are going to be in the kitchen, and because they look really nice, and the other half are going to be in the little greenhouse. And it's actually practical for me to heat the little greenhouse, so that makes looking after them way easier. And I think that the chili peppers seem to do much better in containers. So whilst my sweet peppers are all going to be in the ground, where they need a lot less watering and a lot less attention, just this few 6 plants are going to be in the little greenhouse, as I said, in big containers though, so I still don't have to water them more than once a week. And I'm pretty pleased with these. Again, I'm taking most of the flowers off, but since these are chili peppers, I will leave the odd flower on, and the reason for that is that I kind of like the early warning that the flowers provide of greenfly. It's very difficult to spot a greenfly on the green leaves of the pepper plants, unless you've got a real eye for detail, which I don't have. I find that Debbie can spot the green fly no problem at all, but I'm just hopeless at it. But even I can spot the green fly on the white flower, and the green fly love the white flowers. Well, they've got little any colour flowers, but they love the petals of the flowers, and so it just makes it really simple to spot them. And then, you know, goodness knows what I do about it. Sometimes I just pinch the flowers off if there's just a few green fly and they're just on the petals, because I don't really need the fruits at this point in time. But if I don't get green fly, then I'll leave them on and get early chili peppers, just because they look nice. And so those 6 there that I've just done, those are the jalapenos. And now I've got the Anaheims. Maybe you can see that just some of the lower leaves are just a little bit yellow on these, so they're definitely kind of ready to get a little bit of you know, more higher nutrient compost. So far they've just been in seed compost with no additional fertiliser or anything. They've not been in a propagator, and they're just in the conservatory. Now, I'm not heating the conservatory at night at the moment. It's warm enough without any supplemental heat, and as you can see, the plants are growing just fine. They're very happy. But I do, if it does get really frosty, then I will heat the conservatory just to 10 degrees, 11 degrees centigrade, something like that. I generally go for 11 degrees because it's just then slightly cautious. I like to keep them up to 10 as a minimum, and that goes to planting out as well. So I don't think of, you know, my criteria isn't that it's frost free outside when I plant them in their low tunnels or greenhouse. It's that it's above 10 degrees centigrade. So I tend to plant them quite late outside. You can see that one there, it's got a flower. And there's too many flowers on there, but at the moment they're a little bit fiddly to pinch out, so I just leave them just for a few more days, just so I can get hold of them a bit better without damaging the plant. Just got this last little tray. And this tray that I'm using here is the one that I used, or one of the many that I use for radishes over winter. Never grown radishes over winter before inside. Well, I've never grown them outside either because they don't grow in this climate. So what I did was I just grew them to maturity in these trays under grow lights, and I was harvesting them after 21 days, which I was really pleased about because it meant I could get a lot of successions grown. And what I also found is that I could kind of batch them up, so I could grow 3 trays, which is enough food for 3 weeks, and then just move them outside and into my little greenhouse in the back garden, and they would just hold there until I needed them. So I could do 3 weeks worth in a single sowing, because in winter outside they just don't grow, but they don't decline in quality or anything, so you can just, as I say, it's just like holding them effectively, it's just like putting them in the fridge or something. And yeah, so I found that really convenient to be able to do that, and otherwise we wouldn't have had any radishes over winter. But now, by doing this trick, we can have radishes, well, not quite all year round, because we actually don't do radishes in summer, mainly just because we find it's very difficult to get the quality high enough in summer. They just, you know, they go woody so quickly. So these that I'm doing now, anyway, back to peppers, are long red Marconi. Again, just such a pretty one. You know, I do like growing things that look nice, because I don't grow flowers, or I don't grow very many flowers. So basically, veg has to look pretty for me. And, you know, really, that's kind of not the primary criteria. You know, taste and yield and all that still pretty important to me, but I do like things to look nice, especially in the garden, as again, because we don't have flowers in the back garden. So it's all down to plants that just inherently look nice, or that look nice because of the way they're planted. You know, so for example, you know, lettuce doesn't look particularly lovely, but when you interplant multiple rows of different colours, for example, it just can look really attractive and just be as good as any flower planting. And but peppers just inherently look nice as well, so you don't need to be very creative in your planting plan with those. And then that's it. So that's them all done. Last one. And I probably already mentioned this, but I did pre-warm all of this compost up. The plants will probably be fine if you don't, but it's just so easy to do that why not? Just give them a slightly easier transition from small to big pots. Now some of these at least will need potting on into bigger pots, I guess, but I think they'll last in these for another 6 weeks or so. Now I should probably mention that I have a nice little growing guide to sweet and chili peppers that goes into all the things I've just talked about in a lot more detail and hopefully a lot more succinctly, with lots of videos to go with them and all of that sort of thing. And so feel free to take a look at that, and you'll find it linked in the description of this video, along with all the other growing guides and the rest of my book, which includes, again, hundreds of videos, as well as embedded data from my databases and lots of other goodies. So, hope you liked this quick video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'm going to go and feed my hungry cat. See you soon.